Middle-earth is often viewed as a complete and self-contained world, but in truth, it's just one part of a much larger realm that Tolkien created, called Arda. To fully understand the richness of Tolkien's creation, it's essential to grasp that Middle-earth is not a planet, but rather a specific region or continent within Arda. Arda itself is part of an even grander universe called Ea, which encompasses the whole of creation. Ea was brought into being by Eru Ilúvatar, the supreme being in Tolkien's mythology, through the music of the Ainur, powerful spiritual beings that he created before the world itself existed. One of the most common misconceptions is that the events of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit take place in a world completely separated from our own, like other fantasy universes such as Narnia. However, Tolkien conceived of Middle-earth as an ancient part of our own world, set in a distant mythological past. He often referred to Middle-earth as a version of Europe in an earlier age. This connection to our own world is a crucial aspect of Tolkien's legendarium, which was inspired by his deep interest in mythology, language, and history. The term Middle-earth itself comes from the Old English Midgard, which was used to describe the mortal world between heaven and the underworld in ancient Germanic and Norse mythology. This etymology reflects Tolkien's linguistic expertise and the way he crafted his world with historical and mythological roots in mind. Understanding Middle-earth as part of a larger world helps clarify that it wasn't an isolated, magical land, but rather a key part of a vast, interconnected cosmology filled with other lands, peoples, and powers. At the dawn of Arda, before the shaping of Middle-earth, the Valar, godlike beings who served Eru, descended into the world to prepare it for the coming of the children of Ilúvatar, elves and men. These Valar shaped the land, raised mountains and filled seas, and their influence can be felt throughout the history of Middle-earth, though they themselves eventually withdrew to the far-off land of Valinor. This distant western land is sometimes confused with an afterlife or heaven, but it is, in fact, a physical place within Arda, albeit inaccessible to most mortals. Another misconception is that Middle-earth is the only important region in Arda. While it is the focal point for much of the action in Tolkien's most famous works, other parts of Arda, like Aman, home of the Valar and the elves who departed Middle-earth, play a vital role in the overarching history. The complexity of Arda's geography, history, and its connection to divine beings adds layers of depth to the world Tolkien built, and it helps explain why Middle-earth is far more than just a magical setting for a fantasy story. It's part of a living, breathing creation with roots in our own mythic traditions. One of the most enduring tropes in The Lord of the Rings is the enmity between elves and dwarves. While there's certainly truth to the idea that these two races have had a long history of mistrust, the common perception that they are eternal enemies is far from accurate. This idea often comes from specific, well-known conflicts, but it overlooks periods of collaboration and friendship that shaped Middle-earth's history. The first and most famous instance of hostility between elves and dwarves arises from the tale of the Noglamir, a necklace crafted by dwarves and set with one of the Silmarils, the legendary jewels created by Fëanor. When Thingol, the elven king of Doriath, commissioned the dwarves of Nogrod to set the Silmaril into the necklace, tensions arose over its ownership. This ultimately led to Thingol's murder and a devastating war between the dwarves and the elves of Doriath. The event left a bitter scar on both peoples, cementing a distrust that would last for many ages. However, despite these early conflicts, elves and dwarves were not always at odds. In fact, there were numerous examples of collaboration, especially during moments of great need. One of the most significant examples of their cooperation comes from the Second Age, during the founding of the great elven city of Eregion. The elves of Eregion, led by Celebrimbor, worked closely with the dwarves of Khazad-dûm, later known as Moria, in a period of remarkable friendship and mutual respect. Together, they crafted many wondrous things, including the famous Rings of Power. This cooperation illustrates that the relationship between elves and dwarves was far more complex than simple animosity. In this time, they recognized each other's unique talents and worked toward a common goal. While there was always a degree of cultural and ideological difference, the dwarves being more focused on craft and mining, while the elves were drawn to beauty and preservation, these differences didn't always result in conflict. Furthermore, individual friendships between elves and dwarves were not unheard of. The most famous of these is the bond between Legolas, an elf of Mirkwood, and Gimli, a dwarf of the Lonely Mountain. Their deep friendship, which blossomed over the course of The Lord of the Rings, served as a powerful counterpoint to the long history of mistrust between their peoples. By the end of their journey, Gimli and Legolas had not only developed mutual respect, but also a profound camaraderie, showing that individuals can transcend the prejudices of their cultures. This complexity highlights that while tension and rivalry existed between elves and dwarves, they were not fated to be enemies. Instead, their relationship was shaped by historical circumstances, personal experiences, and, in some cases, moments of shared purpose. The belief that they were always hostile to each other is a simplification of a far more intricate and evolving dynamic. The One Ring is often seen as an artifact of unlimited power, capable of granting its bearer near godlike abilities. While the ring is indeed a formidable weapon, there are many myths and misconceptions about what it can and cannot do. To understand the ring's true nature, it's essential to examine its specific powers, its limitations, and its intended purpose. The One Ring was created by Sauron during the Second Age, forged in the fires of Mount Doom as a means to control the other rings of power, and by extension, their bearers. The Rings of Power were crafted by the elven smiths of Eregion under Sauron's influence, though they did not know his true identity at the time. Sauron's intent was to use the One Ring to dominate the minds of the elves, dwarves, and men who wore the other rings. However, the elves, sensing his treachery, removed their rings, foiling his initial plan. One of the most common misconceptions is that the One Ring grants its wearer unlimited physical power, or the ability to perform feats of unimaginable strength. In reality, the ring's primary power is domination, particularly over the wills of others. It enhances the innate qualities of its bearer, magnifying their desires and ambitions, but it does not make them invincible. For example, while the ring grants invisibility, it is not an inherent ability of the ring itself, but rather a byproduct of the bearer slipping partially into the unseen world, the realm of spirits and wraiths. The ring's true power lies in its ability to corrupt and control, particularly over those who are already susceptible to its influence. Its seductive power is most effective on those with great ambition or desire for power, such as Boromir, who sees it as a tool to defend Gondor, or Saruman, who seeks it for his own designs. However, it is important to note that the ring cannot force someone to act against their will. Its influence is gradual and insidious, wearing down the resolve of its bearer over time. Another common misconception is that the ring can be used by anyone to overthrow Sauron. While it is true that the ring contains a significant portion of Sauron's power, it is bound to him in a way that makes it nearly impossible for anyone else to wield it without becoming a servant of its true master. Sauron poured much of his own essence into the ring when he created it, meaning that any attempt to use the ring's power would inevitably draw the user into Sauron's control. Even someone as powerful as Gandalf or Galadriel recognizes that using the ring would lead to corruption, as the desire for domination would eventually take over. The ring also has limitations. It does not grant its bearer omniscience, nor does it provide unlimited magical abilities. For example, Frodo's use of the ring does not give him the power to control others or summon vast armies. Instead, it heightens his own latent abilities, such as resilience and determination, but also exposes him to the ever-growing influence of Sauron, who is constantly searching for his lost ring. In sum, while the One Ring is a powerful artifact, it is not an all-powerful tool of magic. Its true danger lies in its ability to corrupt and dominate, bending the wills of others to serve the purpose of its master. Understanding the ring's true nature helps dispel the myth that it is simply a weapon of great power. Instead, it is a tool of control and subjugation, bound to the will of Sauron and incapable of being wielded without dire consequences. Sauron is often regarded as the ultimate villain of the Lord of the Rings, but this perception can be misleading, especially when you consider the full scope of Tolkien's legendarium. Sauron, while certainly a formidable and dangerous figure, was not the original Dark Lord of Middle-earth. That title belongs to Morgoth, the first and far more powerful dark power who shaped much of the early history of Arda. To fully understand Sauron's place in Middle-earth, it's crucial to explore the relationship between these two figures and the broader context of their evil. Morgoth, originally known as Melkor, was one of the Ainur, the powerful spiritual beings created by Eru Ilúvatar before the beginning of time. While most of the Ainur took part in shaping and governing the world of Arda, according to Ilúvatar's design, Melkor rebelled against this order. He was the most powerful of the Ainur, greater than any of the others, and his ambition was to bend all creation to his will. He introduced discord into the very music that shaped the world, seeking to impose his own vision of domination. When Melkor descended into Arda, along with the other Ainur, who became known as the Valar, his goal was to seize control of the world. Over time, he gathered followers, including many of the Maiar, lesser Ainur, one of whom was Sauron. Sauron, originally a Maiar of Aule, the Valar associated with craftsmanship and creation, was seduced by Melkor's vision of power and domination. Under Morgoth's influence, Sauron became one of his chief lieutenants, serving as his most trusted and capable servant throughout the First Age. Morgoth's reign of terror was far more extensive than anything Sauron accomplished in later ages. He waged countless wars against the elves, dwarves, and men, bringing ruin to vast regions of Middle-earth. His might was such that he corrupted many beings to his cause, from the great dragons and Balrogs to entire kingdoms of men. Unlike Sauron, who relied heavily on deception and manipulation, Morgoth wielded raw power, often directly engaging in battles and destroying vast armies with his personal might. He even defied the Valar themselves, causing immense destruction before he was finally overthrown at the end of the First Age. The relationship between Sauron and Morgoth is crucial to understanding Sauron's motives and methods. While Sauron was undoubtedly evil in his own right, his character was shaped by his service to Morgoth. Sauron's ambitions were, in some ways, an extension of Morgoth's original desire for domination, but where Morgoth sought control through sheer force, Sauron favored more subtle methods. Sauron became a master of deception, using his powers to manipulate and corrupt rather than to simply destroy. His creation of the One Ring, for instance, was a prime example of his cunning. It was designed to secretly dominate the wearers of the other rings of power, bending them to his will without their knowledge. Despite his cunning, Sauron never approached the level of raw power that Morgoth wielded. Morgoth's influence was so profound that he permanently altered the fabric of Arda. His essence became woven into the world itself, which is why, even after his defeat and banishment to the Void, the scars of his evil remained. Sauron, in contrast, was more limited in scope. His power was immense, particularly after the creation of the One Ring, but it was not bound into the very essence of the world in the way Morgoth's was. Sauron's power was concentrated in his ability to dominate others, and much of it was lost when the ring was destroyed. Morgoth's taint, however, endured in the very land and its creatures, long after his defeat. One of the greatest differences between Sauron and Morgoth lies in their approach to leadership. Morgoth was, in many ways, a chaotic force. His very presence warped the world around him, and his approach to conquest was often violent and destructive. Sauron, on the other hand, was a far more calculating ruler. While Morgoth sought to break the world and remake it in his own image, Sauron aimed to control and order it under his rule. He saw himself as a ruler of a grand, centralized power, where all under his dominion would follow his will. This difference in strategy is one reason Sauron survived as a threat for so long after Morgoth's defeat. He was more cautious, less prone to acts of impulsive destruction that could lead to his downfall. It's important to note that Sauron's greatest period of power occurred during the Second Age, when he became the Lord of Mordor and forged the One Ring. During this time, he not only sought to dominate the peoples of Middle-earth, but also tried to reshape the political landscape. He used manipulation and gifts to sway the Númenóreans, the greatest kingdom of men, to his side. Eventually, his influence led to the downfall of Númenor, one of the most catastrophic events in Middle-earth's history. This was a significant difference from Morgoth, who had no interest in building up human kingdoms or political structures. His primary goal was destruction and subjugation through sheer force. Yet even at the height of his power, Sauron's influence never matched the sheer terror that Morgoth inspired. Morgoth's presence was so overwhelming that even the Valar hesitated to confront him directly for much of the First Age. His actions led to the near-total destruction of Beleriand, a vast region of Middle-earth that was submerged beneath the sea as a result of his wars. By contrast, Sauron, while feared and powerful, was always vulnerable to resistance from the Free Peoples, and his strength was intimately tied to the existence of the One Ring. When the ring was cut from his hand, Sauron was severely weakened, a fate that Morgoth, bound as he was to the essence of the world, would not have shared. The comparison between Sauron and Morgoth also extends to their ultimate fates. Morgoth was defeated at the end of the First Age, not by the elves or men alone, but by the combined might of the Valar, the Ainur, and their armies in a cataclysmic war known as the War of Wrath. His defeat was so complete that he was cast into the void, though it is said he may one day return. Sauron, on the other hand, was never fully vanquished by the Valar, and his downfall was ultimately brought about by the Free Peoples of Middle-earth themselves, with the destruction of the One Ring marking the end of his power. Ultimately, while Sauron is a terrifying figure in the Third Age, his evil pales in comparison to the cosmic threat that Morgoth represented in the early history of Middle-earth. Morgoth's influence shaped the entire world, and even after his defeat, his legacy continued to haunt Arda through the corruption he left behind. Sauron, though formidable, was in many ways a shadow of his former master, seeking to continue Morgoth's work of domination, but lacking the overwhelming might that made Morgoth such an existential threat to all of creation. In conclusion, while Sauron plays the role of the Dark Lord in The Lord of the Rings, it is essential to remember that he was not the first nor the most dangerous dark power to menace Middle-earth. That distinction belongs to Morgoth, whose ambition to remake the world in his own image left a mark that endured for ages. Sauron, though dangerous and cunning, was ultimately only a servant of Morgoth, and his power was but a fraction of what his master had wielded. Understanding this relationship between the two Dark Lords provides a much deeper insight into the nature of evil in Tolkien's world and the long history of Middle-earth's struggles against darkness. One of the most enduring and popular questions among fans of The Lord of the Rings is, why didn't the eagles just fly the ring to Mount Doom? This idea seems on the surface like a simple and effective solution to the perilous journey undertaken by Frodo and the Fellowship. However, while this theory might seem logical at first glance, it overlooks several critical factors within Tolkien's world. Factors that reveal the eagles' role in Middle-earth, the limitations of their powers, and the broader thematic concerns of the story. First, it's important to understand the nature and role of the great eagles in Tolkien's mythology. The eagles are not just large, powerful birds. They are a race of beings created by the Valar, specifically by Manwë, the Lord of the Winds and Air. Manwë, as the chief of the Valar and the ruler of the skies, created the eagles to serve as his eyes and ears in Middle-earth, watching over the land and reporting on significant events. The eagles, therefore, are not mere animals or transportation devices. They are noble, intelligent, and highly independent beings, with a direct connection to the divine powers of Arda. Their role in Middle-earth is one of observation and intervention in critical moments, often serving as instruments of fate or divine will. This leads to one of the most significant reasons why the eagles could not simply be used to fly the ring to Mount Doom. Their intervention is restricted by the larger forces at play in Middle-earth, both spiritual and practical. The Valar, the godlike beings who oversee the world from their distant realm of Valinor, are not directly involved in the affairs of Middle-earth during the Third Age. After the First Age, when they intervened to defeat Morgoth, the Valar took a more hands-off approach to the events of Middle-earth, leaving much of the struggle against evil to the free peoples, elves, men, dwarves, and hobbits. The eagles, as emissaries of Manwë, cannot act as straightforward agents of the free peoples, particularly when it comes to such a significant task as destroying the One Ring. The eagles' involvement in Middle-earth is also marked by a certain degree of unpredictability. While they come to the aid of the protagonists at crucial moments, such as rescuing Gandalf from Orthanc or aiding in the final battle at the Black Gate, they are not at the beck and call of the characters. The eagles are independent, and their assistance often appears to be guided by fate or higher powers rather than simple requests for help. They are not a taxi service, nor are they obligated to assist in the affairs of Middle-earth unless there is a significant reason to intervene. The destruction of the One Ring, while crucial to the defeat of Sauron, was ultimately a task for the free peoples, especially for those most directly affected by Sauron's power. Another key reason the eagles could not fly the ring to Mount Doom lies in the nature of Sauron's power and the military reality of Mordor. Mordor is not simply a distant, unguarded land that one could easily approach from the sky. It is a heavily fortified, well-defended region under the constant surveillance of Sauron's armies, his Nazgûl, and his own vigilant gaze. The Eye of Sauron, symbolized by the fiery, all-seeing eye atop Barad-dûr, is not merely a metaphor. It represents Sauron's ability to perceive and sense threats to his dominion, particularly anything related to the One Ring. If the eagles had attempted to fly over Mordor carrying the ring, they would almost certainly have been detected long before reaching Mount Doom. Sauron's forces, including the fearsome flying Nazgûl, would have responded with overwhelming force. The Nazgûl, as Sauron's most fearsome servants, are mounted on terrifying winged beasts, and they would likely have been dispatched immediately to intercept the eagles. Given their proximity to Sauron's stronghold, the Nazgûl would have had the advantage of numbers and power, making it nearly impossible for the eagles to reach their destination unscathed. Furthermore, the Nazgûl are intimately connected to the power of the ring and would have been drawn to it. Their presence in the skies would pose a significant threat to any aerial attempt to destroy the ring. The ring itself has a will of its own and seeks to return to its master. The closer the ring gets to Sauron, the more its influence grows, and the more likely it is that Sauron would sense its presence. The Nazgûl, being bound to Sauron and the ring, would be irresistibly drawn to any attempt to bring the ring into Mordor, especially from the air, where the eagles would have little room to maneuver or hide. It is also important to recognize that Sauron's defenses are not limited to his forces. Mount Doom itself, located in the heart of Mordor, is surrounded by a region known as the Gorgoroth, a desolate and heavily patrolled area full of orcs, watchtowers, and fortresses. The entrance to Mount Doom is located deep within Sauron's most guarded territory, and any attempt to reach it would require not only avoiding the airborne Nazgûl, but also navigating the deadly terrain below. The eagles, while powerful, are not invulnerable, and their path would be fraught with danger on all sides. Beyond the practical and military reasons, there is also a deeper thematic explanation for why the eagles could not be used to simply fly the ring to Mount Doom. Tolkien's works are deeply rooted in themes of perseverance, sacrifice, and the importance of the small in the grand struggle against evil. The destruction of the One Ring is not meant to be a straightforward task. It is a burden that must be borne by the most unlikely of heroes. Frodo Baggins, a humble hobbit from the Shire. The journey to Mount Doom, with all its perils and challenges, is central to the moral and spiritual themes of the story. It represents the struggle of ordinary individuals against overwhelming evil, the power of friendship and fellowship, and the importance of free will and moral choice in the face of temptation. The Eagles, as powerful and awe-inspiring as they are, would undermine these central themes if they were used to bypass the long and arduous journey of the ring-bearer. The story is not about finding the easiest or most efficient solution to the problem of the ring. It is about the personal growth and sacrifice required to confront evil. Frodo's journey, along with Sam's unwavering loyalty, is a testament to the strength of the smallest and seemingly weakest individuals in the fight against darkness. The Eagles swooping in to deliver the ring would rob the story of its emotional and thematic weight, reducing the epic journey to a mere logistical problem. In this sense, the Eagles are not the solution to the problem of the ring, because their use would circumvent the moral and narrative framework Tolkien carefully constructed. The destruction of the ring required the courage, endurance, and free will of the free peoples of Middle-earth, particularly the hobbits, whose unassuming nature and resistance to the corrupting power of the ring made them the ideal bearers of this burden. The Eagles, while noble and powerful, are not the protagonists of this story. They serve a different role, one of timely intervention and divine guidance, but not of completing the task itself. In conclusion, the idea of using the Eagles to fly the ring to Mount Doom is an appealing one for many fans, but it fundamentally misunderstands the nature of the Eagles, the tactical realities of Sauron's dominion, and the thematic core of the Lord of the Rings. The Eagles, while powerful, are not all-powerful, and their involvement in the destruction of the ring would not only be impractical, but also contrary to the narrative's focus on personal sacrifice and the triumph of the small over the great. By examining the Eagles' role in the broader context of Middle-earth, we can appreciate why they could not have been used in this way, and how their occasional interventions are part of a larger, more complex story of courage, fate, and the struggle against evil.